What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All NBA Show, part of the All City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler, freshly back from Las Vegas. I'm sure it wore you down as it wore me down. How you doing, Legs?
Yeah, a little bit, man. You know, it's the time change is tough. When you go there for a short period of time, and you're coming from the East Coast, it really catches up to you. So yeah, but it was good. I mean, being out there the first weekend, I think Adams is really good. That's what I wanted to do because teams will start shutting guys down, and you don't know who you're going to get. So I was glad to get the 5 games that I got to call, and I saw some pretty interesting prospects and some guys that have taken a step in year 2, and some other very interesting rookies.
Have you been going to Summer League every year? Because I this is my 10th Summer League, and it gets bigger every year. And this year it felt the biggest. I mean, it really becomes an event. They run it extremely well, I think. But it keeps getting bigger, and I just keep wondering when it's going to stop growing. Like, is it becoming too much of an event and less of an actual productive NBA event? But I don't know. Have you been going quite a bit?
I don't go every year. I go typically if it's work related. I haven't really gone just kind of to be out there as a fan to go or just to watch games. I'll watch them on TV, some if I'm not going. The years I work at, I go. It's probably been every other year for the most part. This was the first time I ever called games, and I was glad to do that because it forces you to be really engaged in what you're watching, as opposed to going to the games and there's 1,000 people that I know, right? You're all these people you only get to see a couple times a year, and you end up talking the whole time, and you're missing, seeing some of these guys. So calling the games forces you to really watch and break down some of these young players. And so I came away, I think, with a greater knowledge than I normally would have of some of these guys coming out of Summer League.
Well, we're going to talk about some of the guys that stood out to Legs while he was calling the games. We have a list, I believe 7 players that we'll get to in the back half of the show. But the top half, we have to talk about a move that we had hinted at a couple weeks back, a wild move. Russell Westbrook, according to Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, and he's not usually wrong, is headed to Denver after being traded to Utah and then bought out from Utah in the Chris Dunn, Russell Westbrook swap. He will be coming to Denver to join the Denver Nuggets on a minimum deal. So when you first see this move coming out, Legs, what was your initial thought?
What? That was my initial thought. I got to be honest with you. What? Now, we've talked quite a bit about Westbrook, I think, on this show over the course of the past, season. We've done this. And at one point, Russell Westbrook was my favorite player to watch in the NBA for a long period of time, probably a 5-year period. Him and Curry, take your pick. Curry, for obvious reasons why. Westbrook was just more of a guaranteed investment in my time. I'm about to sit down and watch 2.5 hours of basketball. And when he was playing in Oklahoma City at his peak, I knew exactly what that was about to look like, right? And look, didn't mean it was going to be great every night. Most nights it was, but, he'd have some bad shooting nights, or he'd have some rough turnover games, whatever it may be. But it was going to be a 2.5 hour commitment to giving every single thing he had in his body to the game, and the intensity. I just loved it. So and then he left there and bounced around a little bit. He actually played very well in Houston. He played very well in Washington, had some really good stretches. But these last couple of years, it's been a tough watching Russell Westbrook play. So that's one thing. It's diminished a little bit the return on your time. Look, he still plays hard, but now some of the sloppiness that I'm talking about outweighs that some nights where you're just like, man, oh man. I mean, his 3-point shooting got to a point where you felt like he might as well just turn and punt the ball into the stands rather than take another 3, because it's going to trigger a long rebound and team's going to run out because it's not going in. The turnovers started to become a bit much. Like the actual rage and intensity that he could harness at times when he was in Oklahoma City that kind of made him who he was, became almost like a distraction to me. It got to here later in his career, right? Where it was all the time he was just constantly angry at whatever was in front of him. And it had more of an impact of, you felt like, taken away from his game because the results weren't as good as a player. So now you're focused more on that than you would have been in the past. So this is kind of where he was. So having said all of that, I understand Russell Westbrook is still an elite athlete. He's still a guy certainly that can, on given nights, can be very, very productive. He's still one of the best defensive rebounding guards that it's ever played. That helps your team defense, helps your transition offense. So he still does some things like that. His speed up the floor is still there. I don't understand at all how this is a Denver Nuggets player. That's the part that I'm struggling with. I'm trying to picture Russell Westbrook playing in this offense and playing with these guys. Now, if you're just going to say he's only going to be there to spell Jamal Murray and like that's what he's going to do for those whatever minutes a game, okay. But you run the same offense, you run it through the same guys. And so to me, the way they run their offense and what you're asking guys to do that play that spot, whether you're on the ball as your lead guard or off the ball as the two guard, it doesn't seem like that's a very good fit. I'm curious to get your thoughts. You watch this team every night. You've watched Russell Westbrook his entire career. You know where he's at right now. What do you think?
Well, first of all, he's replacing Reggie Jackson, who I would say all the same things you would say about Westbrook, you would say about Reggie Jackson. Does he fit? He's a scoring point guard who likes to take 8 dribbles and then try to find a way to the basket. And I think you're right that the best use of him does seem to be as a guy that replaces Jamal, not plays alongside him, not starts or does any of those things, but just, okay, when Jamal Murray's out, first of all, Denver doesn't have a backup point guard. There's not one on the roster. So Westbrook now becomes that. But 2, that it just gives you a different look, and him and Jokic can play a 2-man game that's different than the Murray 2-man game. You're not trying to get into these mid-range pull-ups and that type of stuff, but maybe opening up the paint and have him attack there. So to me, there is an avenue where the fit works. I mean, he's so volatile that there's a horrible risk involved in this. I mean, if it doesn't work, it could be really ugly for Denver. But when you look at it, the first thing for me is actually there's 2 thoughts I have for you. One, I've heard from people, both players, coaches, front office, I've heard from people in the Denver organization that they feel the Nuggets offense has gotten a little stale. It's so good, the Jokic 2-man game, that it kind of lost some creativity because you just fall back on this thing and it maybe gets a little stale. So maybe he brings some life to that. But number 2, Denver needed an identity off of the bench. And I think this is the bigger thing. They have not had one. The last couple years, at least in the regular season, their bench has been terrible. It was a -9 net rating last year when Jokic was off the court. So I don't think it can get much worse than that. And I think the team is hoping that Westbrook will bring an identity. Okay, the ball's in his hands when Jokic is not out there. The ball's in his hands and everybody play off him. Whether that's smart or not, I don't know. But what do you think of those 2 things? The offense getting stale and him giving them an identity in the non-Jokic minutes?
I think that's fair to say about the comment about the offense. I think that is fair. I think it gets to a point, where you've seen it this many years and you kind of know that's what's coming, time after time after time. Yeah, I guess there's a point to that, particularly if Jamal Murray is not like really feeling great and healthy and playing really well. Then that's a different animal then, because you have to guard him differently in that situation. If he is kind of playing at an average to below average level for whatever the reason may be at that given time, it's much easier to defend. And that's my point kind of with Westbrook running that stuff with Jokic. You're talking about a guy that you flat out do not have to guard outside the paint at all. So what does that do to the dribble handoff game when the guy that's running it and handing it off to that guy that's receiving the ball is not a threat unless he's in the paint at the rim? Because he's not. At one point, Russell Westbrook was a very good mid-range 18-foot jump shooter. It was actually one of the most unstoppable shots in the league. Coming at you with a head of steam, stop on a dime,
what happened?
Pogo stick, verticality, go up. He doesn't make that shot consistently anymore. And he doesn't make threes at all.
Legs? Why do you think he doesn't make it? Because you're right. I never thought he was going to make the threes, but the mid-range, he's hitting the top of the backboard on some of these.
Here's what I think. I think, when guys get a little bit older and that jump very high on their mid-range shot, when you don't jump as high as you used to, your timing of your release is now affected. When you've jumped a certain way and you get off the ground, let's say on his mid-range pull-up, I don't know, he jumps 28 to 30 inches in the air because that's probably what he gets up when he's going full speed. It stops and goes up. And just before the peak of that jump is when you want to release the basketball. Not at the peak, not after the peak. It's just before the peak when your momentum is still going up so you can generate the distance to the rim. That's when you want to shoot a basketball. When you see guys that to get it later in their career that are super athletic, that jump really high, and they don't jump as high as they used to, they don't time their releases well. And I don't know if that's it, but I know that's been a problem with other players. I played with guys that went through it. It's just gotten to the point where you don't have really any faith that it's going in. Now, he can still get to the rim and he can still offensive rebound, and he creates havoc a little bit that way as a point guard. He's obviously still very good at, if he can get out and get a gap in transition with his speed and strength, he can get to the rim and finish. But I still think even that shot, he misses a lot of layups now that are supposed to go in when he's got numbers or got an advantage in transition, or turns the corner on a ball screen and he gets there and he beats the shot blocker to the rim. He misses too many of those shots. He misses far too many mid-rangers and he makes no threes. So the way you defend him is just so different for the way the Nuggets run their offense and kind of what they rely on you to have to do defensively against that player. And if he's off the ball, I mean, look at what KCP turned himself into as a spot-up three-point shooter. You know, it's still a problem for Christian Braun, and that's still, we still talk about that with him. If he's going to fill that role, he doesn't shoot that shot at a consistent enough rate. At least he hasn't to this point in his career. He may improve. He's so young. Westbrook's not going to improve in that category. In fact, it's the opposite. It's on a rapid decline, and I think that is going to affect the way you can defend them when he's on the floor. Now, look, if you want to say, Adam, I think your best selling point for this would have been, look, they want another weapon in early offense. And they want
100%.
more opportunities. Yeah, they want more opportunities in the course of the game where that ball is taken off the rim by, like I said, one of the best defensive rebounding guards this league's ever seen. And he can be a one-man break. Guys can run into trail threes. You know, Aaron Gordon can run, whatever it may be, or he gets to the rim himself. That's 5, 6, 8 opportunities a game we were not getting. We want to add that to our arsenal. I think that's a legitimate selling point. But the stuff in the half court, that's a reach for me to see how this is going to be cohesive at all. That's a reach. Now, look, there are other things he brings. He brings intensity. He plays hard. He's one of those guys. He's interesting defensively in that he plays really hard for the first 8 to 10 seconds of a possession. Like, he'll get up in a guy and bang and fight over a pick, but it's that second
Ball
half of the
reverses,
possession. That's when he'll get caught without the second effort over the second screen, or get beat on a drive when he's like waving at a guy. He's an interesting guy that way because he has so much intensity, but he doesn't stay with it for the entire possession the way KCP would. So obviously I'm comparing some of this to KCP because I feel like those are the minutes that are going to be available, right? There's how many X number of guard, 30 minutes a night that are available at that guard spot. And I think Westbrook's going to eat up some of those minutes. And I'm just trying to see how he compares to a lot of the things that KCP did. And I don't know that I'm going to see a whole lot of that. So I don't get it. It was a head scratcher for me. I'm going to be honest with you. I got to see it. I got to see it first. Westbrook's a good enough athlete. I don't think good enough player.
I don't think he should be looked at as a KCP replacement. I think he's a Reggie Jackson replacement. You know, I think Denver views Christian Braun as the KCP replacement. Again, a different type of player, but I think this is more of a Reggie move. I mean, he's coming in on a minimum, you know, first of all. So,
but let me ask you a question. I hear you on that, but do you really believe like Russell Westbrook, like, playing 14, 15 minutes a night? That's hard for me to believe.
I think Reggie last year was more closer to 20, which, you know, we'll see. I mean, we'll see.
But I think this Christian Braun, is Christian Braun ready to take the leap where now you pencil him in for 30 minutes a night at that spot? I don't know. I don't think he shoots well enough. So my point being, if you've got Westbrook sitting there and you've got Christian Braun playing, and look, he's a good athlete. He's big, he's strong, he's a pretty good defender. So you can fill that role. But if he's struggling offensively, or he's not, it doesn't take a step forward with the extra minutes, and you got Westbrook sitting there, I'm not going to be surprised to see Russell Westbrook out there with Jamal Murray.
First of all, 100%. It's one of my top concerns. And I think it even puts pressure on Christian Braun, who, if you look at Christian Braun, 2 years in the league, this will be his third year. He's had a nice progression, right? You didn't play the first couple months of his rookie season, gets into the rotation, plays in the finals, you know, as a bench guy, and has a couple really nice games. And then this year, he's regular rotation minutes from the start, has a lot of games where he closes and just plays a lot. So it seems like, okay, there's a progression. Now he's ready to step into the starting lineup. But I'm with you. I think there's a difficulty when, oh yeah, Christian Braun's our starter. Don't worry about that. Westbrook's off the bench. But now you're in fourth quarters, and if you're Christian, you're worried. If I miss a couple shots, am I getting pulled out? And because we have Westbrook to go here, I think that's one of the concerns. So I think that's valid. But I want to ask you, does it surprise you at all that Jokic advocated for this? Because this is part of it. DeAndre Jordan brokered the deal. Westbrook was very interested in Denver, and allegedly Jokic met with them and gave the stamp of approval and said, yeah, I really like Russ. I want him on the squad. Does that surprise you at all?
It does surprise me. It surprises me that Mike Malone would want it either. It does. It surprises me. And this is not Russell Westbrook 8 years ago. That's a different conversation. This is Russell Westbrook now. And some of the other things that he brings, that energy can be negative. As intense as he is, that could be a negative energy around your team. The way that he gets very wrapped up, man, and like distracted in it. I mean, this is a guy that just a few years ago, picked up 4 fouls in the first half against Ricky Rubio, picking him up full court because Ricky Rubio had 20 points the previous game. And Russell Westbrook got completely out of his head, and it took him out of a playoff game. So he just, I don't think he harnesses it well enough anymore. And that's a whole nother element of a personality you're bringing into this situation. I'm curious. You're very aware of what this team's culture is and the dynamic in the locker room. Like what amongst these guys, this is a totally different personality you're bringing in here as well. So I am surprised. It just doesn't seem like what they have accomplished, what they have built, what this looks like. It does not look like a piece that belongs in that puzzle. And that's why I am surprised that Jokic would endorse it, that Mike Malone would endorse it. Part of it is it just, this guy's Russell Westbrook, man. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And
could be simple as that. Yeah.
And he's still very productive, and the West is loaded and he's out there. So let's just add talent and let's see what happens. Right. That's kind of what this feels like to me. Like, just go grab talent. You got them for cheap as you can get them. We'll figure it out. If it doesn't work out, you can move on from a guy like this, but let's give it a shot because it's Russell Westbrook and it elevates our overall talent base.
So, all right. So I all of these concerns are valid. I look at this thing and I say, it's either going to be a disaster or it's going to be a, kind of a surprise workout. I don't think that there's like a ton of middle ground here, but let me go to my 3 biggest concerns. Number 1 is shot selection. I mean, Russ just takes like 4 shots a game where you go, well, what are you doing, man? Maybe more than that. Maybe I'm being generous on saying 4, but shot selection for him is an issue. Denver prides themselves on having great shot selection, especially when Jokic is on the court. They just don't take bad shots. But that is my number 1 concern. Does he come in here and just kind of take all these shots that kill the vibe and the flow on the offense? His lack of shooting, which you have to account for in any lineup that he's out on the court, means you have to have enough shooters around him, which is always hard to do. And by the way, Denver doesn't have a good shooting roster, as we'll go over here in a second. And then the last one is the buy into the role part. And that's what you're talking about here with, is he looking over Christian Brown's shoulder and saying, well, he can't shoot either, so why is he starting in front of me? Why is he closing games? But here's the thing. Denver has had a lot of guys come through. Jokic is a very special player. I really believe this. I know this is going to sound wild or hyperbolic, but Jokic really has had a lot of guys come into the organization and buy into the role. I want to play a clip from Aaron Gordon from this last year's playoffs where he was asked about this very thing, and he had something interesting to say.
Hey, Aaron, after
very physical team and very good on defense, and they were taking us out of our offensive sets sometimes. So I think
all right, we don't have the clip queued up, but there was a question in there at the very end of a media scrum. This was after, I believe, Game 4 of the playoffs against Minnesota this year, and he was asked, Aaron, when did you learn to be such an unselfish player? You've become such an unselfish player on this team. And he kind of laughs, and Jokic is sitting off camera there, and he says, it's funny he walks in just now because it's that guy. I never learned it till I got here. And you see that guy, meaning Jokic. And if he, the MVP, the 3-time MVP, can play unselfishly and not care what he does, then everybody on the team falls in line. And so I thought it was just a really interesting quote that Aaron Gordon's like, I didn't used to be this guy. I became that guy. Justin Holiday last year had a quote about how coming to this team has restored my faith in basketball. Like before it, I was kind of down on it. Reggie Jackson has the same thing. I was depressed in the game, but I got here and just the way the vibe of the team has restored my faith. So I look at that. Even Austin Rivers gives a story about coming into the arena and Jokic moving to the side court so that Austin Rivers could have the main court to get his workout in. And he just says that stuff doesn't happen. So does this matter? Is there a chance that Westbrook, who's played with James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, not exactly the most unselfish player superstars in time, is it possible he comes here and turns a new leaf in that regard and says, you know what? It's the end of my career. I'm just here to be a part of a team in whatever role they assign me.
I do believe there's some truth in that, but here's what's kind of scary about that. If you're Russell Westbrook, that sounds to me like you're taking your foot off the accelerator a little bit. What does that look like if Russell Westbrook does that? That's all he knows. That's all he knows. He plays one way and one way only. And it's one thing to say, hey, okay, he'll be more selective with his shot taking. But then to do that, you have to really kind of change your wiring. And he is wired as tightly as anybody who's ever played. So if you loosen that wiring a little bit because he wants to fit in a little bit more and blend in and fill a role, I believe he probably does want to do that. And this is a team that's still in the mix to win a championship. There's no question in my mind that they're still in the mix. So he's probably thinking like, hey, this might be my best shot ever to win a championship, to be on this team. They had game 6 against the Warriors years ago when Klay Thompson went off at home. That probably was their best shot he ever had. And then they lose game 7 to the Warriors, and that was that. But since then, this might be the best chance he has. He's probably thinking like that. And I'm going to come in. I'm going to be more of a facilitator. I'm going to get the ball to the floor fast. I'm going to create for guys. But the processing opportunities for yourself as a scorer, that to me is innate and inherent. And if you try to change that, I think it affects your overall effectiveness as a player. And that's what my concern would be there. I think his heart could be in the right place. His intentions could be in the right place, but that could be ugly. Watching Russell Westbrook sort of dial it back. Like, what does that look like to watch him try to play like that when he's not a guy that is super skilled in terms of a shot maker and being more selective? It just means that he's never going to make shots. That's kind of how I feel. Like, he takes a lot of shots now and shoots low percentages. And you think a guy like that should be in a rhythm because he takes a lot of shots. Well, now you're saying, well, let's take less shots, space them out more, and you're not a very good shooter. Yeah. So what does that look like? Yeah. And that's I guess that's what I first thought of when you said that. I think his soul is in the right place, man. The guy loves basketball. He's a competitor. I know he loves to win. There's no question. Yeah. I just don't know he's always gone about it in a way that has been the most helpful for his teams to do that.
And then lastly, the biggest upside play for me here, I talked about the bench identity, which again, Denver's bench was already bad. So to me, I look at this and I go, they already had this weight. It could be worse. It can always be worse, but I just don't see it. They were one of the worst benches in the NBA. And number 2, they were 26th in pace last year. I have this stat. Jamal Murray in every year after his rookie season crosses half court slower than any player in the NBA. On average, gets the ball across half court. He walks it up every single time. And we have a running joke at DNVR that he barely gets it over before the 16-second mark every time. Like he almost has to jump forward just to cross. I think Russell injects some pace, and Denver obviously being at Mile High, that's important. But here's the big one. Denver has a lack of toughness, competitiveness, and intensity as a roster. And Bruce Brown brought that to the team because he had that. Yeah. They don't have that type of guy and that just every single night he's diving on the floor and just plays with that kind of energy. And I think that Jamal Murray in particular could use a Russell Westbrook pushing him all year. I've talked about this with you last year, but Murray is so inconsistent. He's never in like peak shape until the playoffs come around. And I just think having somebody like Westbrook in his ear every single day could be beneficial to him, should that be a healthy relationship but not a negative one. What do you think of those upside plays?
That is a great selling point, and I completely agree with you. And he's going to bring that. He's going to bring that. You know what else? He's going to bring that day one training camp. He shows up in shape in camp because the guy plays all summer. Russell Westbrook plays. He'll go on vacation and jump in a pickup game with a bunch of locals. He doesn't. He just wants to play basketball. So you absolutely going to get that. And that if that is something that this team could use more of, he's going to answer that. I will give you that for sure. And the speed up the floor that's still there. I mean, it's amazing to think. I'm looking, how old is Russell? 35. So he'll turn 36 at the start of the season. It's really incredible the way that he has played throughout his career with that kind of reckless abandon to be turning 36 this fall and still have that kind of speed and that kind of burst. So he can answer both of those things that you said could be an element missing from this team. He is going to answer both of those. It's what happens after that initial push up the floor and in the half court offense when he is essentially and this has gone on now for a while, an unguarded player. He's an unguarded player offensively if he doesn't have the ball.
Right.
What does that do to clog things up for what Jokic likes to do and where he wants to operate and having an extra guy in his lap because you literally don't have to guard him? And Christian Brown is a significantly greater threat than Russell Westbrook from the three-point line. And he's not even a good shooter, but at least you got to somewhat pay it. Christian Brown can make them. Like, you got to kind of pay attention. If you look at the way Russell Westbrook has been played, especially in the playoffs the last few years, there's no one near him. And what does that do then to your offense? Now, if you just want to utilize him to create transition opportunities and you don't care, even if maybe there are some questionable shots, if you're Mike Malone on those possessions, he's on the floor, fine. He's going to answer that bell. He can definitely create pace, and he's going to create intensity, add intensity to your team. And so now you just got to hope that those things outweigh some of the things and the holes in his game that could clog up your offense a little bit.
I think the most important thing that matters is Jamal Murray. He was not the guy he needed to be for the Nuggets this last year, especially down the stretch and in the playoffs. And if Westbrook gets something out of Murray, I think it'll be a positive for him. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, let's turn our attention to Summer League. We're going to talk about Reed Sheppard, Cam Whitmore, Terrence Shannon Jr. with Minnesota might have got a steal, man. He has had some really impressive games out there. And then later in the show, Nick Smith Jr., Tyler Kolek, Noah Clowney, and Bub Carrington, all and more on the other side. But first, I got to tell you about FitBod. Whether you're a seasoned gym goer or just starting your fitness journey, the essential your workout really needs is FitBod. It's a fitness app that customizes each workout based on your goals and adapts them as you approve. And not just that, you sign up for this app. It's actually incredible. You put in what your height, weight, what you're trying to do, what type of workouts do you like to do? Do you like to do barbell workouts, machine workouts? You can even put in there, if you're staying at a hotel or maybe you're at a friend's house and you're going to a gym, what kind of equipment do you have? You put in the equipment that you have, what type of workout you're trying to get in, what muscle groups you're trying to target, and it'll customize a workout for you. And when I say customize, it doesn't just give you a list of things. It also gives you tons of information about the type of workout, what you should be focusing on while you're doing the certain movements, and even visual animations that show you exactly how you should be doing it so you're not confused. Am I doing this right? Am I doing it right? You can watch it and it'll really work with you. And on top of that, it also tracks your progress for you. It has all kinds of advice to really help you know what time should I be working out, what types of things should I be doing. It's an incredible support app for you and whatever your fitness goals are. Add FitBod to your workout essentials. Join FitBod today to get your personalized workout plan. You get 25% off your subscription, or try the app for free at fitbod.me/allnba. That's FitBod, FITBOD.me/allnba. Also, want to tell you guys about BetterHelp. We talked about physical help. Right now, we'll talk about mental and emotional help. When life goes so fast, it's important to take a moment to celebrate your wins and to make some adjustments for the rest of the year. Therapy can help you take stock of your progress and set achievable goals for the next 6 months. Maybe these two things are tied. You're wanting to get in better shape. You're wanting to start some new habits in your life, a new routine. Maybe you're looking to switch careers, maybe switch partners. You have some big life-changing decisions ahead of you. Well, why not talk them through with somebody at BetterHelp? If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. That's another benefit of it, is you don't have to be beholden to, I can only get in next Tuesday at 7:00, and that doesn't really fit what I'm trying to do. Instead, you can tailor this to your experience. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So take a moment, visit betterhelp.com/allnba today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ALLNBA. Back here on the All NBA show, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're doing this once a week. Next week, the Olympics start. Very excited for this. Very excited for the Olympics. I've been watching Team USA, Team Serbia, Team France, Team Canada. I think it's going to be a great tournament with tons of interesting games. So we're going to turn our attention to that here next week. But first, Summer League, still going on, by the way, but most of it is over. Your first guy that you list, I asked you to mention a couple guys that stood out to you. Your first guy is my first guy, which is Reed Sheppard. He's averaging 20 points per game through 4 Summer League games, 4.8 rebounds, 5.3 assists, shooting 50% from the field. He's not shooting well, only 28% from the three-point line. That's the only, I would say, black mark on him right now. But This guy has really impressed me with how confident he is and just how talented he is as a scorer.
He's the real deal, man. They got themselves a player. He is a big-time player. He's going to be a big-time starting point guard in this league for a long time because he can do it every which way. He can make plays off the dribble for other people. He has got a nice float game, deep range. He shot a ridiculous percentage in college on NBA distance threes, like over 50% from that distance in college when you didn't even have to. You're 4 feet behind the line where you need to be. He'd go out there anyway and shoot it at a 50% plus clip. He is strong. He's very good defensively, like laterally, his footwork and his active hands. I got to call a game of his, so I really was able to really see him up close and study him and look at what his eyes were looking at and some of the plays he made. He made 2 passes in the game I saw that were very important because it told me like he's at a really high level in awareness and in delivery, because you can be aware, but maybe you have some physical limitations, and he's not the biggest guy in the world. So I was wondering, could he make certain passes? And the exact pass that I'm talking about is coming down, getting a ball screen at the top where he goes right to left. And now he's coming down the left slot on the left side of the lane. And now here comes the shot blocker and the weak side help coming off of the right baseline, coming off of the right corner to meet him at the rim. And he could throw the ball from outside the lane on the left side to the right corner on a rope with one hand, just like a no look. And he as he came off the ball screen, he knew right away where his eyes had to go. If that corner defender has to come to the block because the guy on the block is coming to block my shot, I know that ball's got to go there. That guy's open. The question is, can you get it there? Like, I know Luka can get it there. LeBron can get it there. Halliburton can get it there. Those guys are all 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". This guy's not. Reed Sheppard is like 6'2"-ish. And so I wouldn't know, is it going to look too crowded for him in there? And he put 2 of these on an absolute rope to the right corner. Showed me a lot. You mentioned confidence. I love it because he was getting talked to a lot in the game that I called. Right off
and
the bat,
talking.
there was chirping going on, and he wasn't super engaged necessarily talking back, but he had a sly little grin on his face. Like, okay, I got something for you. And he proceeded to be the best player on the floor. Cam Whitmore was great in that game too. We're going to talk about him in a second. But Reed Sheppard is the real deal. And they got him with the 3rd pick. And I cannot wait to see what this guy's career arc is going to be because one more thing I wanted to point out that he does, Adam. There was 2 plays in the game at least. He came off a ball screen. Washington switched. And you're talking about they were switching with 6'11", 7-footers. One time it was Alex Sarr switched out. And he's 7 foot, 2nd pick in the draft. There was not a lot of space between them. And it looked like from where I was sitting calling the game, Reed Sheppard's back was right in front of me coming off to the right. I thought, well, he can't get that shot off. Alex Sarr's too close. And he stopped on a dime and he get off the ground so high and released it so quickly. And it was like hand on hand on the contest and nothing but net. And I was very, very impressed with his overall athleticism. He had a breakaway dunk in the game. He got way above the rim. I'm just like, man, this guy's got the whole package. He's quick. He's athletic. He's smart. He's tough. He makes plays with his passing. He makes every kind of shot imaginable on the court. I was very, very impressed with Reed Sheppard, and I just think he's going to have a great career.
I would distill everything you said down to this. He is a zero hesitation player. He's not a guy that second guesses himself or this or that. Like, he sees an open guy and he throws the pass. He sees an open shot and he goes into a shooting motion. He sees an open lane and he goes. Just zero hesitation and a fast processor. Like, that's one of the big things about a lot of even good players, like guys that were great at the college level. You step up just to the summer league level and you could see, okay, the game's a little faster. It's a little stronger. Didn't bother him at all. His game was his game because the pace he was playing at and the decision-making was already happening so quick. So I loved what I saw of him. He reminded me, I haven't heard this comp very much, but he reminds me a little bit almost of Devin Booker. He gets the ball late in a shot clock. He just knows how to make a one dribble move to get into his shot. And that's a talent. Like, late in the shot clock, a defense knows, okay, smother him, get into him because there's nowhere they can go. He's good at just like one dribble, get open enough, elevate high enough that he can at least get his shot off. And he's obviously a tough shot maker. So I couldn't be more impressed. The passing stood out as much as anything. he's a guy for sure. His teammate, Cam Whitmore, kind of surprised he played. He was the MVP of Summer League last year, but he also looks like you would expect. 15.7 points per game, 7 rebounds, 4.3 assists. Only 1 of 14 from 3, though, Legs, total in his 3 games that he played. So that's the one negative mark for him. But why is he on your list?
Yeah, definitely. Look, he's an absolute freak athlete. He might have been the best athlete I saw in Vegas. I mean, he's built like a tank, and the way he gets up on lobs and the way he gets up when he attacks the rim, and he's got straight line to the rim, incredible. And this is a guy who only played 7 games before January 1st in his rookie year. So he didn't really see the court until the second half of the year, and averaged like each month pretty consistent in that 12 to 14 range, January, February, March, April, like every month the rest of the season. She shot 35% from the 3 as a rookie. He's kind of selective, and it wasn't a small sample size. He's taken more than 4 a game in 18 minutes. That's like pretty decent, usage from the 3-point line. But it definitely is not something that you look at and say that looks natural for him. If he adds that with this explosive physical athletic ability, man, you got a problem. As it is, the guy already has proven like what he can do in limited minutes, flat out score. 12 plus points a game in 18 minutes a game. That is incredible production as a rookie. And he you said it, came off that MVP last summer in Summer League, turned it into a very good rookie year, and he looked incredible. He looked at times, we noticed the difference between first-year guys and second-year guys in Vegas, but he looked even beyond that compared to the physical talent and just the guys he was playing against. So very impressive. I'm looking for him to take a nice leap forward this year for Houston.
He's too good for Summer League, to be honest with you. And you talked about the strength and athleticism. That's one of the things about Summer League is not everybody is ready for it. He might have been the most ready for it because he's the one imposing the physicality of anybody out there. And then the next guy, Terrence Shannon Jr., 13.3 points per game, 56.3 shooting, only 2 of 10. Nobody shot well from 3 in Summer League this year. But Terrence Shannon Jr. had that phenomenal breakout game 1. I'm guessing that's the game you called. What did you see from him?
He was, you have rarely in Summer League games in Vegas do you see a guy who separates himself that much from everybody else on the floor in that given game. And that's exactly what this was. It was not even close. He was so much better than everybody else on the floor in that game against New Orleans. It stood out to me. I didn't realize, and I saw him in college quite a bit, and I knew he could score. He was the Big Ten, the conference tournament player of the tournament, MVP of the conference tournament for Illinois. So I knew he could score, and I watched him do that. I didn't know he was this thick. His shoulders, chest, like his legs, he is powerful. If he got half a step on a defender, he was carrying them to the rim, and he was not going to be knocked off balance at all. He's a streaky shooter. You mentioned the 3-point numbers. I think he's better than Whitmore. He will be better than Whitmore because he did a little bit more of that in college. I just was impressed with his defensive intensity and athletic ability defensively and how hard he was playing on that end and affecting the game, really pressuring guys. And then if he got any sort of angle offensively, he was at the rim. And he had 2 spectacular dunks in that game, in addition to an array of soft floaters that had to finish over shot blockers once he got in there. So I watched the one game. That was the very first game I called. He was by far the best player. And I called 4 more games over the next 2 days. And that might have been the best individual performance I saw.
Wow.
Was the very first game I called. That's how dominant he was in that game. And so I didn't even look at his numbers the rest of Summer League after I left. But I was like, man, they got themselves a player. Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to translate to the NBA pretty quickly because he's
so where they're in a point right now with the new salary cap and them being such a high tax team that they're going to have to hit on some of these draft picks. And Tim Conley, I just trust him, especially when you have your defense built in. Tim Conley's good at finding scorers, guys that are like, okay, this guy's going to be able to score. They got Dillingham, who didn't shoot well, but can score, can passed really well. And then you get Terrence Shannon Jr., who I think has impressed everybody. All right, let's take one more quick break. On the other side, I want to get to those other 4 players, including a couple names I'm very surprised that made Legler's list here, including Noah Clowney. So we'll do that on the other side. First, get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the pair that matches your style, and they probably have a style in your team's favorite colors, if that's the direction you want to go. So exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code AC35 for 35% off the polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Also want to tell you about Indeed. We're driven by the search to be better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. So I'm going to give you a little insight here at ALLCITY. Whenever we're looking to hire somebody, a producer or talent, podcast host, writer, whatever it is, if we put out a call like, hey, send us your resumes, 100 by the end of the day, easily. If we let it sit for over a weekend, 500 people are applying. How could you go through that many people? You can't. But fortunately, Indeed does a lot of the work for you. They help you match. They do a screening process and help you match people that fit the requirements. To make sure you're finding qualified candidates. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employees agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed service. And listeners of this show will get $75 of a sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now to support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, ladies, let's wrap up the show by talking about these other guys. Nick Smith Jr. out of Charlotte impressed you. 19 points a game, 5.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists. He did have 2.7 turnovers, so almost a 1-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. Half of his shots were three. Actually, more than half of his shots were threes, and he shot 36.4%, so a volume three-point shooter. What did you see from him?
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier. Based on what we both saw from the three-point line in Vegas, 36% was probably one of the better percentages. It did feel like no one was making three-point shots. Here's why I liked him. I liked him last year. Now, he's similar to Whitmore. He didn't get a lot of playing time the first couple months of the season. Most of that came in the second half. He played 51 games, about 6 points a game in 14 minutes, 36%. He shot 43% from the three-point line. In those limited attempts, didn't get a ton. So I know he could score, and he was on a bad team. He got more run at the very end of the year. I had 2 big scoring games to close the season. And I was wondering, like, that kind of caught my attention. You know, they're going to get LaMelo Ball back, a guy that can really distribute the ball. I think Nick Smith Jr. makes their rotation and plays good minutes for them this year in his second year. And I think he scores at a pretty good rate in the minutes he's going to get. So I was just impressed. And the game that I had, Brandon Miller played in that game. Brandon Miller was the best player on the floor. I don't know, I have any idea why Brandon Miller was playing in Vegas Summer League, but he played one game, and fortunately it was a game we called, so we got to see him. And he was great. And Nick Smith Jr. was the second best player on the floor besides Brandon Miller in that game. So I was very impressed.
He's got kind of a funny shot to him. Like, it's almost I would almost call it like guys that are really good shooters on outdoor hoops, because he almost has this way of going up for him. Do you like that? It's not a bad shot. The form is good, but it's just a very unique shot, I would say.
Yeah, and some guys, no, I say no. But with him, it doesn't bother as much because it's one, like you said, he's just one of those guys been doing it his whole life, has been scoring his whole life. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? It's like you kind of, at some point, you kind of go, okay, it works for him. Right. So it doesn't bother me as much with him. There are some guys that come out and I go, mechanically, it's just never going to get there. It's never going to be good enough for the NBA level. I think he does other things in the way he can get to his spots and shots, and he gets it off a decent amount of time. I think he's going to be fine. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that'll be like a double-digit rotational scorer, maybe off the bench, like that kind of player. I think he will be, whether it's next year or the year after.
Tyler Kolek for the Knicks, 11.3 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 7.3 assists, which I believe leads Summer League, 39-33 shooting splits, so not the best shooting splits. What do you see from him?
Toughness, command of an offense better than anybody in Vegas that I saw. That guy just flat out knows how to play point guard. And he makes you better because he's got his head on a swivel. When he comes up the floor or he comes off a ball screen, what he's processing with his eyes was the highest level I saw out there. And then he gets it to you where it has to be. And it's so decisive. Like, he gets rid of the ball so quickly when he gets into the lane or gets inside the 3-point line and he's probing, he's looking, that ball is delivered without any hesitation. The ball is going to be delivered to you when you need to have it. He is a natural born leader, and he's the best impersonator, I guess they could get, of Jalen Brunson. Now, he's not a high volume scorer like Brunson. So I'm not comparing him to Brunson, but what I'm saying is, let's say he backs him up this year in the 12 to 15 minutes he gets on a given night. Number one, he's left-handed. So a lot of the sets they run and things that they like to do that's incorporated for Brunson, where your goal is to get him back to his strong hand, boom, there you go. You got another point guard that likes to do the same things in that way. He is similar athletically in that neither guy gets off the ground very much. Neither guy is a blur. They're strong. They've got great balance. They've got great footwork. And they've got a super high IQ with a soft touch. That is where the comparisons are with Brunson. And so they went out and they got kind of a guy that impersonates him pretty well. And I thought that he kind of addressed that. He said he didn't mind that comparison. That's how he kind of views himself as well. And I saw some of that in him. More of a pure point guard than Brunson in terms of vision and making people better and facilitating. Brunson's obviously a raw scorer. He's going to look shot first most of the time. Yeah. Kolek is not going to do that, but can knock very good stroke, knock down open threes. It's good enough of a threat the rest of the time. But his main thing that sets him apart, what he sees and how he gets it there.
Noah Clowney was the surprise one. He was the Nets pick last year, 21st pick. He gets 13 points a game, 4.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists. He did shoot well, 51.6% from the field, even though he shot terribly from the three-point line, 23%. So I'm so curious how he made your list here.
Well, here's why. First, he's the 21st pick in the draft a year ago, right? So he's a first-round pick. You're kind of invested in him and wanting to see if he can grow. His defensive presence and ground coverage was super impressive. He had 5 or 6 plays in the game that I called that he changed the outcome of the shot at the rim, whether he got credit for a shot block or not, where he came from. And he goes vertical, 2 hands up in the air. Now he committed a lot of fouls in a game. I think at Salt Lake City, he had like 9 fouls in a game because they allow that in summer league.
Right.
He didn't have a problem with the foul trouble in the game. I called, he was just affecting people at the rim dramatically. And I was very impressed with like a guy that is that long, that's got that much awareness to be there early. And he was affecting the game on that end of the floor. And I was watching him before the game shoot the basketball. He definitely has a stroke that is going to translate out to perimeter shot making, regardless of his percentages in Vegas or whatever they were last year. I think he's going to eventually be a guy that can stretch it out to the 3-point line because his mechanics say that that's possible for him. It's just a matter of work and reps and getting confidence from out there. I think it'll happen for him. So then you have a guy that's 6'11", 7 feet. That's a difference maker defensively and can play in modern game with what you want from your bigs eventually down the road.
And he's in a spot, I guess, where a team is looking now to, okay, let's collect as many of these young players and see who works out. So should get a big opportunity this upcoming season. And then lastly, Bub Carrington, another guy who's on a team that should give him lots of opportunity with the Blazers. Bub Carrington, 16.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists. That's a pretty nice line for Summer League. 32% from the field, 40% from three. So what stood out to you about him?
So his game, the way he plays, it just struck me as a Jordan Clarkson type of player. He's got a similar style to his game offensively. And I actually thought his passing was better than I thought it was. I thought he was just a bucket getter. He could definitely do that. But his passing was really good and solid. And he also was playing with guys that were not making shots. His assist numbers could have been a lot higher out there if they had better shooters with him. I think he's going to be really good quickly because he's got good size to get into his shot and he's got a natural scoring mentality. He knows how to manipulate ball screens and he's got the size to be able to get to spots and shoot over people. I was impressed, man. And I know he put up numbers and he was a guy that, people were looking at as a scorer coming in. So I was curious to see what it was going to look like early here. Right. And I think Washington got themselves a guard that's going to be able to generate some offense for himself.
Well, there you go. That does it for our show today, Legs. A nice little Summer League wrap-up. Even though there's still some games going on, it feels like Summer League is actually over. Next week, though, and I'm excited about this. I don't know how you are. This Olympic tournament is going to be incredible, really incredible. And we're already seeing these exhibition games get intense. And I'm thinking it's just an exhibition game. So I'm excited about that. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm looking forward to it. We only get this every 4 years. So yeah, and it's we all know that the international competition is better than it's ever been. So it's going to be dramatic, I think.
Keeps getting better and better. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We do have a handful of more shows here before we take our official summer break, so you're not going to miss out on those. Hit that like button. Have a great weekend, everybody.
We all silly like the mayor.